All right, everybody. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. Good to have you here on the show. We're on the road, so we're not doing the normal setup that I usually have going. So we're missing some of the sound effects, but we got a few sound effects as well. Joining us here at the top of the show, News Debate legend Bjorn. How you doing, Bjorn?
Good. How are you doing?
It's good to have you back on the show. There's been a lot of news in like the past 6 weeks while I was off and wasn't doing live shows. So we have a lot to catch up on. Why don't we just get right into it? What are some hot takes you have not been able to get on the air in the last 6 weeks?
I think the one that's kind of most on the top of the list, everything changes so quickly in the current administration. It's hard to keep up on anything. Remember what happened 2 days ago, but top of the billing is the House passed the new big beautiful bill that its job is to supposedly cut a bunch of funding, and the one that is most pertinent to the health field is like the cutting of Medicaid. I think I don't know, the last time I checked, there was something around 700 or 800 billion being cut from Medicaid. And then it's um, obviously like the point of the bill too is also that it lowers taxes for folks who are on the other end of the spectrum. I think I saw a little graph that said like the average family under whatever was like going to pay 2,000 more, and then like on the upper end, or at least in my tax bracket, people are going to be making 5 to 6,000 more, and so it's like I don't really need to make $5 or $6,000 more so other people don't have health care. So I think
Wow, Bjorn, you're turning down $5,000 or $6,000 the Republicans are just throwing to you.
yeah, and it's just like who wants that? I don't care. I'd rather have people who are the poorest of the poor have access to this, and part of it is the way in which that they're doing it, uh, is having and this is why it's not like straight up like we are just going to lower the number on these people or whatever. It's not quite that, because this is politics. So there is debate about like in the manner in which you would do this, and so the manner in which they're doing it is like, at least there may be multiple ways. I don't know. The main one is this work requirement, and so they're saying basically, if you are an able-bodied adult, and you're not pregnant, not a child, then you need to have a work. You need to prove that you are working, and if you're not working, then you don't get Medicaid, which that appeals to a lot of people, I guess, who feel that work should be tied to your health for whatever reason. I think it
Well, let's
also,
talk
may
about
be a
that. I have
same
a
thing.
CBS
Yeah.
News article up here that has a lot of these details that we can get to eventually, but let's talk about a work requirement. In theory, barring some weird circumstance where someone cannot work, but that sort of disability, lack of an ability is not recognized, and therefore they get screwed over because they're not working, isn't it reasonable in the United States? So I preface this in the United States. There are a lot of things I would do differently, but this is the United States. Isn't it reasonable to say you should be working if you can work and you're on state benefits?
I mean, I think on the face of it, in our society where you know, again, I'll preface this again with that I feel that everyone should have should be universal free healthcare for everyone. We should have a single payer system that makes much more sense, which we don't have to necessarily get into, but it's part of my point. That in this country we tie employment to to healthcare benefits, which you can debate if that's good or not. I don't think it's good, but that's how we do it. So that is kind of our culture, if you will. That is what we think, that if you want to have healthcare, then you better get a job. So I think, and that's the reality for most of us who make more than the Medicaid cutoff line, is you have to pay for health insurance and pay all these copays and all these other things. And so I think from that standpoint, it makes sense that, like, well, I have to work so that I get health insurance. Why don't they have to work? I think that is, I don't think that that's a wrong feeling or statement, because that is kind of the measure of what we do. However, the reality is something, and you maybe have the numbers in front of you, but something like 80% of the people, in the ballpark, of who are on Medicaid already are working. And because there are so many people in this country who, employers don't, there's somewhat of a requirement for, because we do tie it, is that if you do work somewhere and they work long enough hours and all this sort of things, then the employers have to offer health insurance, and they have to pay a portion of it generally if they're a bigger business. Again, there's requirements. If you're a small enough business, you don't have to pay anything. You just have to, like, give them a plan or something, or send them to Obamacare. But at some point, if you're a big enough company, you have to pay a portion of your employees' health company. So a way that companies do that is, of course, like by offering, only part-time positions, or the things, basically to keep you under that line. And so then you're forced to uh, forced to like turn to Medicaid to healthcare. And that's why it's famous that, like, people say, well, people who work at Walmart are on Medicaid, because Walmart does things to folks where they don't give enough hours or part time, so they have to be on Medicaid to get their health insurance. Now, again, going back to, let's just say they are working however many hours, but they still qualify for Medicaid. Again, it's something like 80%, ballpark number. Um, Then how do they do
Yeah,
this?
really
So
quick,
now
let's go
you're
into that.
working.
So
Yeah,
ChatGPT has that as of 2023, approximately 64% of Medicaid enrolled adults under 65 were employed, 44% full time, and 20% part time. So, yeah, a bit lower than 80, but okay, big ballpark. You were in there. More than half, less than half full time, but overall part time and full time included, 64%. And then an additional 28% were not working due to valid reasons. So that's damn near everybody. 64% working, 28% not working due to valid reasons. So the amount of people that would be cut off by this, you have to work rule in this new giant, wonderful Trump bill that just cleared the House, it seems rather small, correct?
yeah, and that's the point, is that, when they did this in Alabama and I think another state where they required a work thing, what actually works out to be is people are working, but the requirement to report out if they are working becomes this bureaucratic nightmare. And depending on how onerous you make that, people
Okay,
who
now
are
that could
working
be
are meeting all the
true.
requirements.
So I'm working, or like I wasn't working, but you tried to take away my benefits, so I got a job. How long until that works through the system? I guarantee that's not quick. That's a fair point.
Right. Or if you don't file it fast enough or frequent enough, or whatever the requirement is, then you're going to lose your health care. So all it does, and like you said, most people are already working or have a valid reason. And so that very
According to
small percentage of people
2023
who are,
numbers, it's like 8% nationally would be
yeah,
affected by this.
right. So those 8% of people who, like, you're real mad at because they just want healthcare. And also, like, that is also including people who are maybe in between jobs or looking, or other circumstances. And those people are the
Well,
ones that you're, like, real
but
mad
if
at
it's
that
in
they're
between jobs, I mean, we could go, well, were they fired or did they quit their job because they knew if they quit their job, they could still keep their coverage. So I don't know how to parse that exactly. But let's go back to this. We both seem to agree, and I think any reasonable person would agree that the bureaucracy end of this is a nightmare, just like anything with the government. But that brings us back to this argument that we have, this discussion, I should say, on the show constantly, because I think it's a great one. The death penalty. I'm for the death penalty, and then someone will say, "Well, Lee, what about someone who's innocent and they're sent to death row?" I'm not worried about that. You can be for the death penalty without having to worry about the current system. I think those are two separate arguments, and we can have both of them, but I think they're separate arguments. So I think here, in a way, we can have separate arguments. Are we able to have a work requirement, and is that reasonable? I would say absolutely. Does that screw over a lot of people? Okay, that's a separate discussion. My answer probably there is also absolutely. So let's put our words out here, Bjorn. So, are you for the work requirement? Give me a yes or no and explain that. And
No.
then tell me what you think about the reality of a work requirement. So, you're against the work requirement. Why is that not reasonable in theory? So, once again, we're divorcing ourselves from the bureaucratic nightmare reality. In theory, what's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, for me, I think healthcare should be a universal right of humans. And I think that should be something that we as a society just agree should be covered. And and that's
But
for
that's not
multiple reasons besides
this.
just like,
That's not what this is, though.
well,
So
you
you
asked,
being against a work
you
mandate
asked
doesn't
me
do
what my
anything for
opinion
universal
is.
health care. That's fair. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but
Hey,
you
Lee,
asked my
shut up.
opinion.
He's giving you
Yeah.
your opinion.
Yeah, and that's what I started the whole conversation with was, in my opinion, it should not be tied to employment. Like we should decouple healthcare from everyone's work, and just make it a thing, and we can decide how to pay for it and mechanisms to pay for it. Because again, if you look at, going back to other previous arguments, if you look at how much the United States spends on healthcare already, not even having to do with how much private individuals spend on healthcare. We could have Canada's system tomorrow. We pay more. The United States government pays more per
We pay
capita
more for
than
health care
Canada
than
does.
any other nation, and we have the worst health care outcomes. Absolutely. Sing it, sister. We've said it on
And
the
then on
show a
top
million
of that,
times.
we pay privately. We pay privately. So like above and over and above what United States government is paying per capita, we are paying all of that money going into the private system as well. So we,
So all of this is
you know,
true.
pay.
We've talked about this. Don't trust us. Go look up the numbers. But all of this is true. But it's sort of like Obamacare. I'm against the Affordable Care Act in principle, but in reality, I'm for it because it's better than what we had. We got rid of you
Yes.
can't get health insurance because you have some horrible condition. You can't do that to people anymore. It's kind of falling apart because Democrats are terrible. My side of the party is terrible, and they can't win the White House anymore. So it's just falling apart
Mm.
under repeated Republicans in the White House. But that all being said, I'm glad it happened. So I would say through that kind of lens, looking through that periscope, if this is what happens to the help that we have for the poorest of the poor in the United States, I got to say I'm willing to swallow this pill compared to what it could be. I mean, if they're just including this work requirement and it's all these other things that we have yet to discuss, but you know what? I feel like with the Republican power the way it is now, we got to take our lumps, and I think this is an acceptable beating.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess there's several arguments in there. One is if we were all in it together, then I think the senators and everyone who's voting for it and all of the rich people who get like uh, awesome insurance is going to have a little bit different thing to say. But right now, when we're othering and saying, well, it's okay, it's acceptable for us to put these restrictions on Medicaid people because they are, the poor and the trashy people, the people who we maybe don't care as much about. But it's not me. But then when it becomes your issue, then suddenly you care more. And I mean, that's human nature. When it affects you, you care a heck of a lot more about it. And so a part of the argument is if you're all in it together, then these are the senators who are also in this system, and it's affecting their healthcare. Like the Senate healthcare system is pretty darn good. They've got pretty nice insurance, which is a lot different than Medicaid. And so an
But they're
argument.
working.
Um,
I mean, they have jobs.
they are.
So, I mean, in this case, they passed the test.
But your argument is like, well, look at we created Obamacare, and then people are just messing it up. But if it's your system that you're in and you're messing it up, then that's different. So like if you're saying, well, I think we need to do more work requirements, so everyone needs to like do this thing, that means the senators also have to file this same sort of paperwork. Versus now they're in this policy against people who are not them. And so, like, if you're saying we're not going to pay for erectile dysfunction meds, and these are the 70-year-old senators, and this is applying to them specifically, and that's different.
If they
See how
wanted to have work requirements for erectile dysfunction meds, I think I'd be okay with it. Hey, man, you got to work it during the day if you want to work it at home. I mean, come on now. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think the point I'm trying to get home, which I know you're understanding, but I'll emphasize this just one more time and see where it goes, is that for the U.S., this is our culture. This is how we do insurance, and the Republicans have earned this ability. I'm not for this. I don't think it's important. But 8% of people, if we say nationally, that's going to be a lot of people. And if this is how they decide they do cost cutting measures versus a bunch of other things they could do, the bill has a lot of ins and outs, so there is more. But I mean, this seems par for the course for Republicans. I guess what I would say, Bjorn, is that this does not surprise me, and therefore I'm sort of okay with it. I think normal Republicans could be for this, and anything normal Republicans are for doesn't scare me nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that to your question, the question is, does this fit in with normal American culture? Yes, and that's different than the question of what I think. Then we can now move on to the practicalities of this. And if you look, and you can chat GPT, fact check me if you'd like. One of the things that this does is it looks at least the latest CBO, which is like the community, the government thing that says how is this bill actually going to work. It's estimating that about 15 million people will lose Medicaid because of this bill, and if you look, that number is much higher than the 8% that you're quoting. And so the practical actual effect of this bill is that more people are going to be kicked off Medicaid than are necessary. And this mirrors what happened in Alabama. The people who they are real bad about were sitting around just getting those healthcare dollars. This bill is going to affect way more people than those actual 8%. So the effectiveness of what this is, while you're targeting those baddies, is going to affect the healthcare of up to 15 million people. And so that's what we're talking about.
I'm
We're
not
talking
seeing
about
that directly in
doing
front
this
of me. I'll
thing
see if
for making
that's
that point.
somewhere in the CBS News article. But are we just thinking that's because of people who can't get in the work requirement but are working, so it's bigger than 8%? Or is this some sort of other thing that they're just purposely going to kick people off? What do you think that 15 million is?
I don't know, but the at least what the Dems are saying is that's mostly from the red tape effect. So like people trying to
Okay,
meet
so it's
this
just sloppy government,
requirement.
and it's not going to do what it
Right.
says it's going to do. But in all fairness, maybe that's just the way everything at this level would work. Okay, really quickly, we got Shannon joining
And
us
if you're
over
okay
on
with cutting,
Twitter Spaces.
if
Shannon,
you're
if you want to
okay,
talk, just give us a hand up. Yeah, Bjorn?
I was just gonna say, and like if you're okay with making the point on those 8% by cutting 15 million people's Medicaid, then I guess have at it. And that's the problem is like with these government things is that when you're making these what you may consider a valid point on those 8%, what it actually ends up doing is kind of destroying the system because you're making a point. It's kind of like going after the voter fraud and requiring like real IDs, even though voter fraud is basically
So yeah, you're
non-existent.
going to stop the
If you're
7 people around the country who are voting illegally, but you're also going to disenfranchise people. You're going to stop legal voters because they don't have the right ID. They didn't bring it with them, whatever. They don't have an ID. So yes, there will be casualties. Stay with me, Bjorn. I want to establish just a few facts here because I myself am not up to date on all this. I know I saw the headlines, but it has been passed. So House Republicans made a number of last minute changes, this is from CBS News, to the legislation containing President Trump's second term agenda in order to win over opposing factions in the GOP. And after an all night session, the measure, entitled the One Big Beautiful Bill, squeaked through by a single vote. Hey, man, everybody always says on this show, Lee, my vote doesn't count. Well, if you're in the House, maybe it does. It'll now go to the Senate, which will leave its own mark on the bill. But here's what was passed Thursday. At the center of the legislation and accounting for its biggest expense are the provisions extending Mr. Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts. Act, no S. Beyond the 2017 tax cuts, renewal extension, the legislation includes a number of tax cuts that the president touted on the campaign trail. It includes no taxes on tips for workers in the service industry. Okay, I remember that. So that's like restaurant and bars, as well as people who work in the beauty industry. Wow, you tip your barber, your stylist, no taxes. But that's a temporary exemption that expires at the end of 2028. Well, it's got a few years in there. The package also includes no taxes on overtime through the same year, 2028, and it would allow tax deductions of up to $10,000 in interest on auto loans for cars assembled in the good old US of A, and that would go until 2029. Also eliminate a longstanding $200 tax on gun silencers, which has been on the books since 1934. Wow, that's a big change. Also, a temporary $500 increase in the child tax credit, bringing it up to $2,500 through 2028. Bjorn has a couple of kids, so that might be some of the $5,000 he said he might be getting. There's some other things. Okay, Medicaid restrictions. The legislation includes changes to Medicaid. It's a popular entitlement program. Everybody hates socialism in the U.S., but if you ask them, what do you think about Medicare, Medicaid, and retirement benefits, everybody's always like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, you mean socialism? So it imposes work requirements for able-bodied adults. So in theory, for people who should be able to work without children. So able-bodied and no kids. There's more frequent checks on people's eligibility, and it cuts federal funds to states that use Medicaid infrastructure to provide health care coverage to undocumented immigrants. I got to say, if you're here illegally, I don't want you to get any health care coverage. Call me crazy. And banning Medicaid from covering gender transition services for children and adults. I would certainly say for children, 100%. Adults, that's a more nuanced discussion. But if this is helping the poorest of the poor, I don't know that that should be included at all. But certainly, I'm more open for adults than kids. And yeah, there's also the SALT stuff, state and local tax deductions. But okay, that's a good gist of what just went through the House. Shannon, your hand is up. Bjorn, if you want to talk, just go ahead and talk. You can't raise your hand over on stereo, as you know. But Shannon, you've been waiting patiently. Also, we have MC Funk, another great supporter of the show, and patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporter, as well as Bjorn and Shannon. Shannon, great to have you on the show. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to say hi while we're discussing this. Hi, MC and Bjorn. I haven't seen you guys in a while since Lee's been MIA. I'm still looking for a report. What are we talking about? Food stamps? Is that the new cuts with food stamps and Medicaid? And
so we haven't gotten on food stamps yet, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think I've read, was it either federal or was it a certain state that they're no longer going to let people with food stamps buy like soda and candy,
soda
something
and
like
energy
that?
drinks, Nebraska.
Well,
Soda and
is
energy drinks, Nebraska.
controversial? Should you be buying soda and energy drinks on food stamps?
I don't drink them, but yes, I think you should be able to. I don't buy them
Really?
on my
This is fascinating. Tell me why food stamp recipients should be able to buy soda and energy drinks.
Really, I think the kids should be allowed to have something special for them, and maybe a soda is special for them. Or, like if you have kids or whatever, or you're a diabetic, you need something that's gonna shock your sugar back if you get too low. So banning any and all sugar is just a stupid idea because There's sugar in like
Was it
everything we eat
any and all
anyways.
sugar, or was it just
No, no, no,
soda,
no. That's
slash
what
energy
RFK
drinks
wants.
and candy?
RFK wants all sugar taken off of food stamps, EBT.
Okay, so that's something
Right.
that maybe down the road.
Right.
Let me
No,
try to
that
find
bill
this. You
that
said this was Nebraska. I don't remember the state, but I read a headline
yeah,
here.
it's
So Nebraska
Nebraska.
is
Pretty
saying no, I guess sugary drinks would be the term, or carbonated
no,
drinks.
not nope. They specified soda and what's Red Bull? Energy drink.
Energy drinks. Okay, so soda and energy drinks. So maybe you could buy a Gatorade. We'll look that up. But so definitely soda's off the list. Energy drinks are off the list. And then candy. So we'll have to find what a
Which,
definition of candy is. But if we just stick to soda, energy drinks, and what we would not randomly, what we would mostly objectively consider candy, I really think if you have kids and you're on food stamps or whatever they call it nowadays, and you want to get them a treat, I think there's still an ability to get them something special. If that's a concern, I think that's still there. It's a bit harder, absolutely, but it's still there. Secondly, I don't think any kids should be eating candy and
or if you want to buy a
carbonate
birthday
or
cake from them,
soda and energy drinks generally. So if it's something that you got to get a kid one every once in a while, maybe you just pay the $3 out of pocket. I don't know that this is a big deal, Shannon. Tell me how this is a big deal.
I mean, I'm better off than most people. I'm in a bunch of rooms with people, and some don't have the ability to cook, so they buy a prepackaged stuff, or it's not healthy. Some don't have a home that are on EBT. They have to go to their 7-Eleven and get something.
But
Um,
give me a
or
good reason why, if you're homeless or you can't cook, how not being able to buy soda, energy drinks, and candy really affects you, because there's still
a
plenty
lot
of
of people
things you
live
can buy
on.
to drink, and you can still buy sugary things that probably
Well,
are
currently, yes,
bread items instead of candy. So how does this really affect people? I don't see it.
because it's a small step to leading to other things, and like we already can't buy stuff with like vitamins in it. So like if your tea has certain brands of tea is a big thing if they have certain supplements in it, whether it be if it's marked as a medicinal tea, like there's some like sleepy time, some celestials that you can't get because if they're not approved by the FDA for that
But
certain.
they can have tea. So, I mean, they're still getting tea, just maybe certain kinds of tea is off the table.
Correct. That's the only one I know. That's the only one I can put it as an example of something that's banned off. Oh, the other thing is hot food. You can't buy hot food on EBT. So, like a rotisserie chicken in the store, you can't buy that. But you could buy chicken from the deli as long as it's not heated.
Okay, so I could understand why you're not supposed to buy hot food, because then I think it would allow you to basically buy like hamburgers at a grocery store. I don't think you can go through the drive-through with your
There
food
are
stamp credit card thing, but
In California, some people can go to fast food restaurants and buy food with their EBT, but they have to be
well,
under a
I'm
certain
definitely against
classification,
that.
and that's only California.
Let's just
I'm not
push that
against
off
that
to the side
actually.
because
With
it's
their
California. But if you go to a grocery store or a gas station that would take your food stamp credit card thing, um, I'm sure there are situations like, for instance, a rotisserie chicken. Usually, those are pretty large. The price is pretty good for what you get. Okay, I
right,
would say maybe we should let them buy a rotisserie chicken, but if it stops people from buying like chicken nuggets or hamburgers at grocery stores that sell them or wherever else they can get them, those are not good buys. They're not healthy for you, but first of all, I would say the amount of food you get versus what you actually pay, it's more of a convenience rather. I mean, it's not a convenience to buy a rotisserie chicken and go sit out in your car and eat it with your hand, right? So I
right.
think mostly this is a good limitation because it stops people from spending their food stamps on things that are not good for them and are not good economic buys.
But if you don't have a home or a stove to cook with, Maybe you want a hot meal once in a while.
You're right. Um, that's a downer, but you're on food stamps. You're getting food.
Right, but think
I'm
of
not really worried about this. I would say we need to worry about getting more people food stamps rather than what you can or cannot buy, because you can still buy the basics. And you know what? If you're homeless, truth
but
be
people
told,
have
I'm
trouble
not
buying.
homeless, never been homeless, but I feel like having a hot meal is not something you need. You need a home.
Of course you do, but you also have to think you can't buy normal stuff with food, like necessities that you can't get any other way, like toilet paper, shampoo, soap, anything like that. You can't get those. You have to use your own money for that.
I assume you can't, but I mean, that's a bigger discussion. I mean, we're talking about the
Right. No, no,
recent
I'm just
change
saying,
with food
but
stamps,
but
right?
like when you say, can't they just save up to $3? Well, now you're talking about taking it out of toilet paper or, you know,
But once again,
soap
buying a
or
treat for a child or having a hot sandwich when you're homeless versus bread and cheese and lunch meat, these are
right.
not life-saving things. And in the US, where we're not really big on food stamps, I have no problem with removing this opportunity because
But
that's not what food stamps are for. And while it
oh,
might make you feel better, statistically, I don't think this bears out that this is going to be an improvement for people.
what they're doing is going to be an improvement or what it is currently.
Taking away candy and soda specifically for what's happened in Nebraska. But if we just talk about hot food in general, I don't think that if you allow people to buy hot food, which means they'll have less food available to them than if they buy actual food, not necessarily
I don't know
ingredients, because
about
maybe
that.
they can't cook. But if you buy cold food in a grocery store, you get more food than if you buy hot food. That's absolutely true.
But like the rotisserie chicken, for example, I could go
That's
over
the one
to like,
exception I would say is not the
right.
case. You
No,
get
no,
a
no.
lot with a
But
rotisserie chicken.
right. I mean, that's much, where you could make much healthier meals. And if I buy a whole chicken now that I could cook, that's more expensive than buying just the rotisserie in the case.
Sometimes, not always, but
Bar.
sometimes, yeah. I mean, if you go to
Yeah,
Costco
most
and
of
get
my
their
stores.
rotisserie chickens, it's a loss leader. Like I believe I've read somewhere, just like their hot dog and soda for $1.50, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
They don't make really money on that, but it gets people
Right.
into the store. When you go to Costco, people will go through with 2 or 3 rotisserie chickens in their cart, but they'll also have a bunch of other groceries. But once again, how many homeless people are well, you talked about people who don't have a home so they can't cook. So if you have a home and you can cook, this isn't a thing for you. And I think most people on food stamps are somewhere that they can cook. They might not choose to, but the percentage of people who are homeless on food stamps, I think, is definitely lower than the people who have somewhere to cook. This is a small change. I don't think this is important. It is a change, and I'm sure it's a downer, but I just fail to see how this is an important difference if we talk about hot food or specifically what just happened in Nebraska. But stay with me, Shannon. I want to just read now from the New York Times to give
Sure.
us the details of what's going on here.
Oh,
For
speaking
two
of,
decades, I'm sorry, go on, Shannon. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I just say I'm angry that Reuters now has a paywall again as well? I like CNN for
Oh,
me.
Reuters has a paywall now. I didn't know that.
Yes, so I can't use them anymore either. But it's actually it's $1 a month, but it's still a paywall. It's
Still, hey, the Great Wall of China could be 2 inches high and it could still be a wall. I mean, doesn't mean I can't get past it, but for 2 decades, the federal government has rejected states' efforts to ban purchases of sugary drinks using food stamps, in part to cross an unusual coalition of corporate interests and anti poverty groups. But now the Trump administration has weighed in, approving a first of its own kind waiver for Nebraska to ban purchases of soda and energy drinks through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program known as food stamps. Okay, so it was a federal thing that they allowed, but then Nebraska had to pull the trigger. It is likely to pave the way for more state waivers signaling a sharp shift in nutrition policy. I would say it's actually a shift in favor of nutrition, but okay, thanks, New York Times. Under the proposal, Nebraska will establish a program beginning in January 2026 that affects some 150,000 food stamp recipients in the state. In its waiver application, Nebraska says it would regularly survey participants to evaluate changes in their spending habits and examine retailer data to assess reductions in purchases of soda and energy drinks. That's the interesting thing. Since food stamps are like a card now, they actually can tell what you're buying, so they get that data. A spokesman for the state's Department of Health and Human Services says it will provide technical assistance to help retailers make the transition. That's a really interesting point too, is that if you say you can't buy soda, energy drinks, and candy, the state of Nebraska or the federal government, through its exemption waiver thing, may say this is what that means. These are the definitions of soda, energy drinks, and candy. But what really affects this is if you go to a grocery store or a gas station, whatever it is, they have to label this is a soda, this is an energy drink, this is candy, and these things are not. So they might be lax, they might be too attentive and overextend these labels. So that's another part of this. I don't begrudge the government or Nebraska because this is out of their hands, but much like the discussion with Bjorn, the reality will be different than the legislation itself. The prohibition adds to the limits recipients face. Already, their benefits do not apply to hot foods, like Shannon was mentioning earlier, non food items like toilet paper, alcohol, and tobacco products. Okay, well, hey, if you're homeless, I bet you want to get drunk and have some cigarettes. That'll probably make you feel better for a few people. I mean, if I was homeless, I'd be drunk off my ass. But the government shouldn't be paying for that. In recent months, Nebraska and other states, largely led by Republican governors, have sought waivers to extend those restrictions to now what they call unhealthy purchases, which, call a spade a spade. Broken clock's right twice a day. Those are unhealthy purchases: candy, soda, and energy drinks. We can argue whether or not that's a good idea, but I don't think you can argue that those are unhealthy purchases. Okay, so that's the update. Bjorn, MC Funk, Shannon, anyone want to throw in? Yes, Shannon, your hands up.
So the one thing I can see that people do, I'm sure it's not many, and it depends on what state you're in, but I've seen people buy cases of soda and then dump it out to return the cans for the money.
I'm not going to really address that because this is what you've seen, and I don't know what the statistics are. But if
No, I
people
don't know
are
what the
wasting their
statistics are,
food
but that's
stamps in that way, they probably don't deserve the food stamps.
right, because we don't pay, like, if I bought a case of well, here in Connecticut, you
If you
pay
bought
deposits. I'm
24
like,
cans, you get 24 times 5 cents. It's not a lot of money.
right, but we don't pay that. We don't pay the deposit like other people. That's covered by our food stamps. Like if I
Well,
buy a
until
case
someone gets a waiver, but I guess, yeah,
yeah.
if you allow people to buy soda on food stamps, which I'm against, then I think the food stamp should cover the deposit. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's just like there was an article on it too before it was included. I can't find the article. That's why
I
I
bet
should have
you're
brought
going
it
to
up.
find it,
Sorry.
Shannon. You're pretty good at finding those
It
articles.
was talking about.
Shannon, why
It
don't
was
we let
talking
you
about.
loose? Let the hound loose. Find that article about people pouring stuff out, and then we're going to check in with MC Funk. And if you have something else to add, Shannon, just put your hand up. MC Funk, great to have you on the show. Longtime
Yeah, man,
supporter, longtime friend of the show, but he's only here when he has time. What's on your mind?
It's been a minute. What a weird dystopian hellscape we ended up in, huh? To the subject at hand, I think so. A lot of these provisions sound good on a kind of principle level, and sound like something that most people agree with. And it's like, well, yeah, like I don't want people to be able to do that. And so like it on a principle level, it sounds like a good idea, but the I guess the issue is one of like actual effectiveness at achieving the stated goal. Because there's the stated goal and then there's the kind of unstated goal. And more often than not, a lot of these policies that get put into place, the stated goal might be to improve health outcomes, but the unstated goal is to actually just make it harder for people to use so they don't use it. And
Yeah, that's
the
fair. I think
and
Republicans are trying to do that in every way that they can.
Yeah, and I mean, you see this consistently with the Republicans in government, where because their fundamental kind of guiding ethos is that government is bad, they basically do whatever they can to break it to kind of prove that it doesn't work, and they want a less capable state, and they achieve that by breaking the state so that people see, oh, this is broken. I don't want a more capable state. The but What multiple studies have shown in kind of social benefits repeatedly is that to achieve the stated goal of kind of actually improving health outcomes for people, the carrots work much better than sticks. Rather than kind of restricting or punishing people who don't do things in the way you want them to, provide incentives instead for them to do things the way you want them to, and those yield much better results and are far more effective
So
in
I
achieving this.
assume that's probably correct. Beating a child and telling them not to do something has a lot of negative consequences versus trying to give them positive reinforcements. Okay, I can see that. But if we talk specifically about this, if the state of Nebraska, and it seems like they'll be able to work with retailers to get this done, mostly makes it impossible for people on food stamps to buy soda, energy drinks, and candy, they will achieve that goal, which is a healthier amount of food that people are buying with their food stamps.
I think you're making a leap there. That's not quite. No, I'm not going to sit here and
I mean,
argue
the
that
amount of
people should
soda,
be.
energy drinks, and candy
Oh, no, no,
purchased
no.
with food
Just hold
stamps will
on,
go
hold on,
down
hold on.
drastically.
No. Just hold on. The I think you're you're making a leap here that the that implementing that those restrictions lead to better health outcomes. It may reduce the amount of soda and sugary drinks and candy that people are buying with food stamps, sure, but it has the also has the effect, the demonstrated effect, and we've seen this in other states that have tried this sort of thing, of just making the program more difficult to use in general, and thus actually reducing people using it at all, which then leads to more food insecurity, and people having less food.
Yeah, I mean,
And
once again,
that's a
Republicans just want to get rid of food stamps. So you're not
They do.
wrong. But I think at a
They do.
certain point, you can also just push these things aside and look at a very specific example. And for instance, the New York Times has in this story, the American Heart Association says it unequivocally supports reducing the consumption of sugary drinks as a means to combat heart disease.
Yes,
So
yes,
this
but
will help combat heart disease, and I don't think that's debatable.
um, I guess I don't. There's still a there's still several assumptions made there, and that but I get the concept, and the the concept is sound.
Can we
I
agree that there might be some positive health benefits from this, but Republicans aren't doing it for that reason?
There might be, but I think it is the much of the research has actually kind of bear it out that that's not how this ends up playing out. And that
Sounds like
the
MC Funk has some overseas sugarcane holdings,
no,
and he's like,
no,
"Well,
no,
Lee, I
no,
gotta
no,
tell you, I mean, sugar's not as bad as people say it is."
no, that the primary effect of implementing restrictions like this is that people just don't use it, and then that creates more problems because you end up with a big list of restrictions of what you can and can't get, and then it's like it creates a really messy interaction at the grocery store
Okay,
of
so let me ask you one question. We'll get your
yeah.
answer, and then I want to ask you another question. So, slippery slope argument here with the power that the Republicans have and the fact that Trump is insane, I think, is a valid argument. But if we just look at this specifically,
Mhm.
couldn't this have a very small amount of disenfranchised food stamp recipients in Nebraska because it is targeted to soda, candy, and energy drinks? Isn't it likely that all the things you said could happen with other things or have happened in the past with other things, but perhaps not so much with this specifically?
um so the yes, all things are possible. But I did. I sent you. I posted in your Discord a link to a an article from the University of Michigan where they kind of went through basically this very thing and what they kind of the issues like how some of these things played out in their state and kind of restrictions versus incentives in SNAP benefits in Michigan and how that affected actual outcomes. And the and essentially what they kind of the summary of what they found was that restrictions in general you know
Yeah,
basically
here's the
make the
title.
process
University of Michigan expert: SNAP food restrictions don't improve health outcomes while incentive programs show promise. This is from earlier in April of this year.
um but sure I think the and so this is that's actually it's a similar effect to the Medicaid work requirements. And this was a big issue in Arkansas several years ago when Arkansas tried it, and they tried to get it through, and they had it for a while, and the effect it's again the same kind of thing where from a principle standpoint and kind of conceptual standpoint, Medicaid work requirements are overwhelmingly supported by um, Republicans and a lot of Democrats, just from a conceptual point, and a principle standpoint that we shouldn't be getting basically don't freeload off the government if you're able to work. You shouldn't be getting benefits if you're not working. And the principle there is essentially has support across the board, but the implementation was very much one of the the kind of administrative burden of dealing with that effectively makes the effectively creates a disenfranchisement for people who do satisfy the requirements, but
Yeah.
basically don't get the step number 17 in the 47 step
The idea
process.
versus the
Right.
reality. So, not saying
Right.
you say this, but someone could be for the death penalty, but then against the death penalty in reality because the system is so bad. So, I think what you said makes sense. I think generally the idea that someone needs to
But I mean,
work to
it's not
receive
the thing is though,
benefits is something that could be bipartisan, or that people should not be spending their SNAP benefits on soda could be bipartisan, but the reality might have some other consequences that we've discussed. Really quickly, let me read from this University of Michigan article that you sent me over on Discord. Really appreciate that. Go to bit.
hello, do I still have you?
I was just gonna ask the same thing because X has been acting weird with the spaces for the last few days.
Okay, so I had you.
I hear
think,
you, MC. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we
I
may have
can't hear
lost
Lee.
Lee. I think we may have lost Lee. So while Lee is working on iterating on that, the I think my broader point is that this isn't just conceptual. In both SNAP benefits and Medicaid and kind of social welfare programs in general, we've seen this play out in many different contexts over the years of kind of carrot versus stick and
But
kind of administrative burden and kind of disincentives are have the net effect of people just not using it. And incentive programs are generally much more effective at getting people to
well,
kind of
here's what I'm
stated goal.
worried about, or like an example, like when New York banned like the big drinks, the big sodas. Did it really lead to any change?
I don't know.
That's one thing I was going to try to look up because that's the only other one that I can remember where they've actually gone through with the ban.
California did that too.
California did that too.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Lee's back.
Hey.
Well, this is Bjorn. This is not Lee. I didn't know.
Oh, Bjorn.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've lost Lee.
Apparently, it's now Shannon MC and Bjorn debate since Lee's out. But I think the one point I want to make on this is that as a growing up, definitely I was my family was supported by welfare and food stamps and all of these sort of things that people try and want to take care of. I think for me it was
the other drink.
Lee might be back.
And all that stuff. I can't think that that's going to have a negative effect on people's health. But sorry, yes, Bjorn, go back to you.
Oh, sorry, Lee. We had a long time where we couldn't hear you till just now, so I don't know if we heard anything of what you said. But we all three could hear each other, but we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, Lee. Basically, you said, "I'm gonna read from this article," and then you went dark until like just now. So
we were doing our own debate without you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Everything sounds okay? Okay.
Yes.
So let me read from the University of Michigan again. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate that. So you didn't hear me read from the article?
No, we did our own debate between the three of us. We were on our own debate. You didn't hear me talk about the New York.
I didn't hear any of that. So clearly my internet took a dump. Okay. Expanding restrictions to more food categories would amplify all the problems we predict with more soda restrictions, plus create new ones. More restricted items means more confusion at checkout, more stigmatizing interactions, and more barriers for families trying to feed their children. Restricting SNAP purchases based on often arbitrary determinations of dietary quality feeds into the incorrect belief that the public has a right to monitor and criticize what low-income families eat. The 42 million Americans who rely on SNAP are taxpayers, workers, and our neighbors who are struggling with rising food costs. Broadening restrictions essentially tells these families they can't be trusted to make their own food choices, which is both demeaning and, according to the evidence, ineffective at improving nutritional behaviors. We all deserve dignity. So long and short of it, that sounds very liberal to me. It doesn't sound like they're actually quoting a lot of statistics there. And so I would say work with Nebraska to track the statistics, because I think what happens in Nebraska is going to improve outcomes for people with food benefits. I don't think you can trust people who are on SNAP to spend that money wisely. I absolutely agree. That's why we have restrictions. I absolutely believe that.
The point is that incentives to spend the money wisely are much more effective than restrictions.
But incentives means that you give them more money, which Republicans don't want to do. So I don't know that that's on the table. It's just like spending money on sexual reproductive health and family planning services for teenagers has better outcomes than abstinence only and don't touch yourself at night. But Republicans don't want to do that. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if Democrats want to do these things, win more elections. This is the reality in Nebraska. It's the reality across the country now. So I don't know. I just don't think that's on the table.
Maybe I don't I'm not
was gonna
convinced
jump
that.
in, if
Yeah,
possible.
please
Oh,
do.
sorry. Yeah, Bjorn. Thank you. Yes, please jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my argument was going to be actually from that is the same thing that the article pointed out. As I was saying while you were silent, this that I grew up, being a beneficiary of SNAP and welfare and my whole childhood, and in general, my mom, who was a single mom, made pretty good choices. Like, I never had soda growing up. I wanted soda so bad, and whenever I had soda, it was like the greatest thing ever. She never bought it. She didn't buy soda. She bought pretty basic things. The rice and beans, and of course, she wasn't a chef type cook, but we got by. That also include like frozen pizzas occasionally, or like boxed dry foods, and so like generally, the things that she cooked was okay. We got by. And I think that the question is like, this whole idea is a like rich folk looking down their nose at poor folk, saying they're obviously poor because they make bad decisions because of XYZ or whatever. So they
You don't think poor
obviously
people make
don't know.
bad decisions? You don't think there's any truth to that?
This is exactly my point, is that initially when we start talking about
That's
this,
my
like,
question to you.
you don't
You think
poor
there's no
people make
truth to the
decisions?
fact that poor people have made bad decisions at all? That there's no more likelihood that poor people have worse health choices, or poor people have worse food choices, or worse life choices than very rich people? I'm not talking about Donald Trump, who was born with a silver spoon in his house. You don't think there's
Don't you
anything to
see
that argument at all?
exactly? I haven't finished my point, bro. But that exact sentiment is exactly the demeaning type of attitude that is just so terrible. It's just like, because someone is poor, they're obviously less than. They're less of a person. They're
That's
less
not what I said.
intelligent.
It's not
They're
what I
making
said.
poor. Well, that's how it comes across, and that's exactly how these sort of bills come across. It's like, all right, poor people, you guys are real dumb, so we're not going to let you do this. We're not going to let you do this. And it's so, when we go back to sort of like liberty as an American, if we would talk about what is American, it's like trusting people to make good decisions. We're a democracy, and so we're letting these same dumb people who can't make their decisions on whether they get soda or not decide who get to be president of the United States. And you can argue whether or not that system is good. But at the end of the day, there's a dignity that has to come with like making food choices. And my mom, who was not the most educated person, did not
Anecdotal,
obviously
Bjorn. You
make
know
great
better than
financial
that.
decisions.
Your mom made great decisions, but that has nothing to do with this argument. We're talking about statistics. We're talking about life choices. We're talking about data.
I'm telling you that there is a dignity component to this as well. You can disagree with that. That's fine. I'm just
That is
saying
true.
this is
The
a
fact
this
that
is a
there's a dignity
major part of
component, I
the
do agree
equation.
with. Yes.
So that's my is that, yes, there's a big totally to say, just assume every person who is on Medicaid, or everyone who's getting SNAP welfare queens, who are just sitting around not doing anything, and like that are just having babies, just living off the system. That is a false narrative of what is actually happening with people who are in poverty
And
in this
not a
country.
narrative that I
Everyone is
have uttered
poverty in this
during today's
country.
show. So I just would ask, if I ask a
Yeah.
specific question, we might disagree, and then we can try to rephrase the question. But like, I didn't say those things. I mean, does anyone disagree
No,
that
I'm not
class, if
saying
you
I'm
will,
not
in the
saying
United
you
States
in
has
general.
a different associated decisions with it that often can be traced back? And it's not just, well, your family was poor. I mean, there are real differences in culture. We've talked about it in the United States all the time. Why was it that so many Asian Americans got vaccinated while so many African American, Black Americans decided not to? There's differences in culture. And you had Black leaders coming out and be like, please, God, just get vaccinated. You didn't have to do that as much in the Asian community. We talked about that. Those are truths. We don't have to argue about them now. Just look them up. It's still out there. The data is available. So when I say that there are things associated with being poor and being on SNAP benefits, those are also truths as well. It doesn't paint a broad brush for every single person. Clearly, you have an example that would be contrary if I was saying that. And I'm glad that your situation was as good as you described it. But I mean, is anyone saying that we should not have any restrictions on SNAP benefits? Should people be able to buy booze? Should they be able to buy cigarettes? Should there be no restrictions? I mean, if you have money, you can buy
Well,
whatever you want, but clearly these people don't have money.
Well, that was part of my second point that I hadn't got to yet. Was, once we talk about the dignity issue, and that clearly, like, in general, there's like classism, if you will. There are people like look down upon poverty folk as lesser than, which is obvious. I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
Don't disagree with that.
That there's going to be scammers everywhere. You can right now with your SNAP benefit, and I have had folks who I know who are in my family, who go buy shit from the store and then barter it off for drugs and beer and cigarettes. That's possible. So it doesn't matter how many restrictions you put on it. Then the people who are going to scam are going to scam. You can't stop them. They're going to buy meth with it. You can go and you can buy
Because people
whatever, a
are going to
steak or
figure
whatever you
out
want.
ways we can't have any restrictions. So I mean, like, kids will find someone who can buy them alcohol and tobacco. So we shouldn't have any rules on how old you should be to buy that stuff. They'll get past it. That's really defeatist, Bjorn. I don't think you really believe
No,
that.
that's not defeatist. I'm telling you that if there are people who want to buy alcohol with their SNAP benefits, they're going to figure it out. But the majority of people who are out there are buying food for their kids and just trying to do the best they can. And so these sort of things, and again, I'm not going to die on the soda hill. Clearly, I talk rage against soda every single day of my life.
I'm not going to die on the soda hill, Lee. This is not a hill I'm dying on.
But in general, like, we're talking about, again, similar to the Medicaid example, those 8% of folks, maybe whoever made that statistics up, is going to like destroy the system for the rest of them. And like, again, like just saying like, you guys don't know what you're doing, then we're going to do that. Like me, rich dude, I can spend gajillions of dollars on crazy alcohol from like Spain or something, and like I can get hammered on that every day and like whatever. But when it's the system that we're giving like dollars to, then we're going to just not trust you to make any decision whatsoever. And it just seems very dignity. And the majority of people are making good choices. They're making best choices they can for their family with the skills that they have. And I just think it's going to be the overall thing is not a great restrictive sort of thing.
We're going to jump over and hear from Shannon, but really quickly, Bjorn, could you give me an answer? Should there be any restrictions on food SNAP benefits, or should people be able to spend it however they want? Should there be any restrictions at all? I mean, should they just be able to use it like cash?
I mean, I think you wanted to ask like pure decision, I guess I would be more along the lines of like an Andrew Yang, if you will, that we should have more like a universal basic income.
That's not the question. So with the current system where we have food stamps, SNAP benefits, should there be any restrictions at all? Should it just be like cash? So when you have that plastic thing that looks like a credit card, which goes into the dignity, so you don't have to get out the food stamp book. You have just a card that if someone sees it's a card, they don't know you're using food stamps necessarily. So, okay, I think that's a good change. Should there be any restrictions, yes or no?
They do, because the card is...
I understand it has a thing on it, but it gives you less of a stigma than whipping out a book of food stamps, right? But Bjorn, really quickly, should there be restrictions on the current system, yes or no?
I think it's reasonable if there are restrictions, yes.
Excellent. So I think the fact that we can have restrictions and we agree on that is a really good place to end. We don't have to end talking to Bjorn, but just to wrap all that up, we can disagree on some restrictions. But if someone tells me they're against any restrictions on the current way food stamps are given to people, I just don't know that I can have a conversation with you, because we're at very different points. And I don't know that there's any discussion that can be had. If you're getting benefits from the state, I assume there have to be, because it's state benefits in the US, or we don't like state benefits. And I think it's not only because of that culture that we have with everything, it's a good idea. I don't think you can trust anybody with free money from the US government. And I think specifically people who are the poorest of the poor, which is what you have to be to receive food stamps, SNAP benefits in the United States, I think there are a lot of good reasons to not wholeheartedly trust that demographic as well. Call me crazy. Shannon, you've been waiting very patiently. We're going to get over to MC Funk after we hear from you, but Shannon, take it away.
Yes, there should be limits on food stamps because if you're buying like cigarettes or alcohol, that's not going to your children because 40% of people are under 18, not even under 21, just under 18.
Sorry, didn't mean to press that button. You're telling me kids don't like cigarettes and alcohol?
Well, maybe they would, but I mean, those restrictions, yes. But my question is with the soda one, Lee. Are they banning all soda or just soda with sugar? Because if I was a parent, honestly, I would rather having them drink sugar soda than aspartame
I
soda.
assume sugary drinks
But-
would also cover a Diet Coke. I don't see that in the article, but I assume
I didn't
it's
see
the
that in
same
any of the
thing.
ones. Yeah, I didn't see that in any of the ones, but it doesn't have any sugar in it, so why ban it? Or are we going to ban like baking goods, like when you buy sugar? I mean,
Maybe Bjorn could throw in on this, being the medical industry field person in the discussion, but I don't think just having a sugar substitute gives you a blank check. So while we can argue which is better, the sugar,
Right,
like the
yeah,
cane
no,
sugar or the corn syrup or some sort of sugar substitute thing that you get at a cafe, I think the bill would look at that all the same. I don't think you can just sell an energy drink that's diet, to get past that restriction.
yeah, I haven't seen anything about that. I didn't know if it was just all sodas because they're like centering on sugar, right? Processed sugar, and not other things in the same. Or like diabetic candy has zero sugar. Will that be covered and not?
So some of those things gets into what Nebraska defines as those
Right,
three groups,
absolutely.
and also what the retailer defines as those three groups. So maybe you would have a really good retailer who goes through and says, this diet caffeine free Pepsi is eligible. I'm just making something up, right? Or this
Right, yeah,
diabetic candy is eligible. But you're probably going to have a lot of places that are like, oh, this is candy that's in our system. If that is scanned, you can't pay for that with your
Well, each store is responsible. Each store is responsible for coding each one to what Medicare. Sorry, what SNAP tells you what that code has
just
to
like
be.
cigarettes or alcohol. If
Right.
you scan alcohol at a Walmart self checkout, it says someone will come over and check your ID, but that's because they've
Right.
tagged it. So if there's a
Right,
bottle of
absolutely.
alcohol that someone has snoozed on and didn't tag it, you could just buy that and walk out. So it's no different than anything else that stores sell.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if you had seen anything on that. Like, are they trying to ban are they discriminating against the soda? Like, is it just because it's sugar, or is it
I'll have to look that up
soda?
here and try to
Yeah, I was
find that
trying to look
answer.
at.
I don't have it.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to find it, but yeah, no, that was just. But I put a couple things down there about this, like what I was specifically concerned about with my food stamps, and Trump's last plan that didn't work for food stamps. So, and I'm hoping he really doesn't get that back in his head because that
So
would
you
kill me.
tweeted those? Should I look over on
Yes,
Twitter to
I
find
did.
that? Why don't you
Yes,
give
I'm
me the
sorry.
general gist while I start trying to bring those up?
Sure. Well, Trump's first term, so 2018, I think, is when he tried to, if I'm remembering, it's either 2018, 2019, when he first wanted to change food stamps. What he wanted to do was take away everyone's food stamps and send everyone boxed food to their address because it would be cheaper because they could negotiate. That was his first plan, to send like the meal services that they have on TV now, like that. to
Yeah, what is
homes.
it? Blue Apron, but it would come from the
Yeah.
government. So it'd be like,
Right.
what would be we got to come up with a name for the government food service where they send food to your house. I feel like there's a lot of comedy to be had there. But okay, that was his original idea, because while that might sound crazy to people, you can see the reason why that would be something they think that other Republicans would get behind, and maybe even a random Democrat, because if you're sending out that amount of money, that amount of money's worth of food, you can buy in bulk and the food you
Right.
would send people would be cheaper than the spaghetti they could buy at the cheapest grocery store.
Correct. But then you got to get into like, well, what if one kid has one food allergy, another one has another one, or they won't eat it? I mean, kids today, it's not like, when I was growing up, you didn't get a choice, but they just won't eat. How are they going to, what are they going to take each of us individual menus every month and then separate the boxes for what we can and can't eat and what we're allergic to and not allergic to, or religion? Hell,
There
if
was
you're,
I'm sorry, Bjorn,
certain
did you have
religions
something to
can't eat.
interject and then we'll go back to Shannon?
Yeah, there was a system that was like similar to that. I mean, I remember growing up that we would get this it was like food from the government that was like government, like I don't know, like I don't know if you heard about government cheese that
Government
would
Oh
come
no,
in
cheese?
I
Yeah.
had that
like a
growing up.
box of cheese, and it was like
I
it was kind of like Velveeta, and it was actually tasted really good. I
Oh,
love
it
the
made the
government cheese, and we would get this like kind of stuff, and I don't know why that system went away, but for whatever reason that system went away where people were like getting food directly from the government. It wasn't shipped to you. You had to go to the place and like pick up your monthly allotment of government cheese and other things that they would give you. But that was a thing that used to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They would supplement the food stamps that were in the book. You would get peanut butter, cheese, bread, I think, and maybe a milk. No, absolutely, I remember that,
So
Bjorn. They made the
again, you
best
might
grilled cheese
disagree
sandwich,
with
but
Trump in general, or you might find a problem with the way he talks to people, which if you don't have a problem with the way Trump talks to people, you're not paying attention. But once again, the idea of just like, we will give you food, it not only makes sense, I think, financially when you break it down, but historically, as we just heard from Bjorn, and we've all heard of government cheese, this is something I guess they used to do. So really quickly, and then we can move on to some of the other things that you've posted. I'm just doing something in the meantime, and I haven't been able to pull these up. Would you be against that, or do you think it's better just for choice to just give people the electronic food stamp card?
I don't see it being cheaper because they would have to deliver that stuff. I mean, people can't get to locations to pick it up, and
So yeah, I could go back to the system Bjorn mentioned where you would go pick it
yeah,
up.
pick it up. Right.
But let's just say we're not worried about the cost. Somehow they figured it out. Would you rather just give people the ability to buy their own food, which they'll have less food for that amount of money? Or would you think that if they can do the system and somehow they can make it work, if you can give out more food for the same amount of dollars per individual, they just send you all the food, or they send you some, you go pick up the other? Just in theory, would you rather have the one where you get more food, or would you have the one where you get more choice, even if it is limited
Oh,
to
more
you can't
choice,
buy soda?
100%. More choice, 100%. Like I don't eat beans at all. Any sort of bean, lima bean, baked bean, freaking. Okay, I'll eat a pea if that's considered a bean, but like lentils, stuff like that, I will not eat them at all ever. You will never make me force me to eat those. I just can't take the texture. Hate it. So that food would literally go to waste in my house. And again, people who are homeless or don't have refrigerators, or so you send them 10 pounds of meat for the month. Where the hell are they going to put it? Or even me. I don't think I have 10 pounds in my freezer right now. I have a small refrigerator. So,
So clearly, there
well,
were
not
some
small.
examples. Homeless people would be hard to get sent food. But I think what Bjorn was mentioning earlier, if they were to try to reinstitute that in a way that, was adapted to 2025, 2030, where everything is sent through the mail, however they can do it. Once again, food stamps are supposed to be food. And if they're
Right.
giving you food and it's like, oh, uh, this person, Shannon, doesn't want beans. If they can handle those types of requests, I'm allergic to chicken, that sort of a thing. They will be able to get more bang for their buck. And that's probably why they had that in the past. But for whatever reason, perhaps just the fact that they went digital, it was just easier
No, no,
just
no.
to
It was
give
for
people.
no. They did it from 1930 to 1980 because of excess milk. That was the reason that the
But you
government
said,
gave
like,
it
they
out.
had peanut butter and stuff, so it was more than just
Right.
cheese and
No, I,
milk.
I remember my mother getting like these cans of peanut butter, like you get at a military base almost. And I don't know if that was just something special because the program that I'm reading for like the government cheese, it was cheese and milk. And I really thought I remembered bread and peanut butter,
Yeah,
but
no,
that could be just my
we
state
got
that
peanut
did that.
butter. We got peanut butter
Yeah,
too.
okay. Yeah, but it says the distribution of government cheese was properly and as it is properly known ended in the 1980s, primarily due to the depletion of surplus cheese stockpile and changes in government programs. The program, which started in 1930 and became prominent in the 80s, was designed to deal with excess dairy products.
So yeah, there's probably more than just the excess dairy products, but whatever the case, I think that there is some value to the idea that you don't
Yeah,
just
I mean,
get
we still had.
a blank check with some restrictions. Here is perhaps a smaller blank check with restrictions, and for the other money we're no longer giving you, you're going to get more bang for your buck by having this sent to you through the United States postal system. By the way, that's a federal thing, or by going to a food distribution center. And maybe it's even a choice. You can get more food if you're willing to sign up for this, or we'll just give you this amount of money, which is less food. I think that there's some value there. I would love to see some more research on that and bringing that back in whatever way that they can. Okay, so let's move past that. But then, Shannon, you have this thing from News 5 Cleveland. So I'm going to share this. This is from, March of 2025. A new national report estimates that criminals are pocketing almost $400 million in taxpayer money each year by taking advantage of flaws in a federal safety net program. It's a problem News 5 has been covering in Northeast Ohio. The crime wave is much bigger than the official statistics indicate, according to a new report from a tech company. The U.S. Department of Ag says that EBT theft, I think that's like the credit card you get, has cost taxpayers more than $220 million over the last 2 years. That's based on government data. But the new one found even more of that, around 400 million total. That's a small number relative to the federal government's overall spending on food benefits, however, which approached $113 billion in 2023. But the losses are still significant and particularly harmful to parents of young children, disabled people, and the elderly who are struggling to put food on the table.
I literally go into the Reddit food stamp to give advice, and every day it's like 4 or 5 people from all over the country getting this that are reporting to Reddit that their food stamps are stolen. So it's got to be huge.
Do you see how this is happening? It keeps talking about EBT theft, but how are they stealing this from people?
Okay, so your EBT card is not like a debit card. All it has, it's not like an updated debit card. It's like an old one that you would use. It doesn't have a chip in it. So what happens is they use skimmers. So when you put your card in, they don't need to, because with the chip, it scrambles
Okay,
it.
so if
They
you
can't.
use your card at a store and you have to actually swipe it and you're not using the chip and you're not using tap, it's much easier to steal that information, and then you go try to buy food the next day and your card's been cleaned out.
No, actually, what they do is they wait till the third of the, or they do it on the days that food stamps are deposited, and they'll do it at like 12:01 at midnight. So you don't even have
Okay,
a
so like the
chance.
second that it gets deposited, it's just all
Because
gone.
it gets it gets stolen out of there. And then they use like what do they call it? Like ghost stores, like ghost stores or ghost kitchens, and or they buy the product themselves and then sell it on whatever. But
Okay,
yeah,
so you like
it's
go
a
into a
huge.
store that's not a real store. They're like stealing
Well,
your
no,
information.
no.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Well, no, the scammers use ghost stores like to get the EBT benefits out of your account.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like,
So they will
you
use
understand
the
what I mean?
EBT at a store but then the store
You
doesn't
use it
label
at a
things
store or a
correctly, and
grocery.
therefore,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So this just sounds like a credit card problem that in the past was the problem everybody faced, but then we moved to chips, and then we moved to tap. Tap might actually not seem secure, but it's super secure if you look up
Right.
the technology. So this is a technology thing that the government is just slow to adapt to because, of course, that's the government.
Well, it was ordered
And this
5
is
years
not
ago, just
anything
so
we
you
were
know.
talking about earlier, but yes, it's important to talk about food stamp benefit theft, which could be up to 400 million rather than 220 million every year or two. So that's a big deal.
And
Yeah, it's small
part
compared
that's
to the
worse,
billions they spend, but 400 million is still a lot of money.
right? And the problem is up until December 20th of 2024, if you got your benefits stolen, if you filled out a police report, you get your benefits back for that month with a new card, and now they don't do that. So you're just shit out of luck if you happen to scan your card at the wrong store. They stopped all
Well,
reimbursement.
yeah. If you fill out a police report, I feel like that should have some weight. But yeah, I could understand how with government inefficiencies and delays and stuff, they're just like, well, if you lose it, you lose it. I can see both sides of the coin. I'm not
Yeah. It
surprised
was,
that they've gotten rid of that if that's the case, because that sounds like something that they would no longer have in the last couple of years, and certainly today with the Trump administration. But yeah, that's
yeah, that was
disappointing to hear
Biden,
because
actually. Biden didn't include it in the final budget there. So it stopped
oh,
at
you're
the
telling me
December
Democrats have been
2020.
throwing poor Americans under the bus? No, this is news. I've never heard this before.
Yeah, 2024. It's the reimbursement stopped in 2024 because of our last budget vote. They didn't include it in the budget vote when Biden was in office, like November, when they were doing that 3-month budget bill.
Well, clearly, a lot of stuff with budget, you have to make it bipartisan to get it passed. But yeah, that would have been nice if that was in there. Now, once again, this is probably something they could fix with technology. So this is something that in the long term maybe will not be a problem, but it seems like it is a problem now. MC
Yeah,
Funk has
right
been waiting
now.
patiently. We also have Ron.
Oh,
But
sorry.
before we do that, Shannon, was there anything else that you wanted to get to? We talked about Trump's earlier food stamp plan where he was just going to send people food. We talked about food stamp theft, which we just finished on. Anything else you want to discuss before we move to MC Funk? And Ron, if you want to talk, raise your hand.
Hi, Ron. No, no, I'm good right now. Sure, I'll get raged about something.
Yeah, just build that rage, Shannon. Good
Hello,
to have
Shannon.
you. Hey, Ron, why don't you just say hi, Ron, and then we'll go to MC Funk.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. It's been a long time, Lee, and good to see you, Shannon and MC Funk.
Good to see you,
And
Ron. It's been a minute.
yes, it's been a minute. It has. So just glad to be here. And don't forget to repost the space. Don't forget that. Thanks, Lee.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I guess I forgot to do that. Well, I'll do that right now. Appreciate that, Ron. Also, Bjorn's joining us over on stereo. All right, back over to MC Funk. You've been waiting patiently. What do you have to throw out?
Yeah, so I just posted a study in your Discord, but the general analysis there is looking at the strictly from an economics and cost saving perspective, the cost effectiveness and looking at correlating kind of changes in SNAP programs for both incentives for better food, which would be kind of you know like Michigan did with kind of doubling the value when buying like fruits and vegetables or other things like that, and then disincentives and restrictions on like sugary soda and beverages, and looking at basically the cost of those on a food assistance program versus the cost savings that those yield and associated Medicare costs for the state. Because all these are associated with kind of better or worse health outcomes, which in turn has an impact on what it costs the state to provide Medicare benefits. And the overall kind of takeaway from it was that incentives for better food save more on healthcare costs than the incentives cost to provide. Restrictions on bad food save a little bit more on healthcare costs than the incentives do, but combining them both actually saves way more on healthcare costs than it costs to provide them.
So that's great. Appreciate that. I have that up now over on the video stream. That doesn't seem surprising to me. That's what I would have guessed would be the case. But once again, when you have Republicans in power federally, and you also have a state like Nebraska, I don't have to look it up, it's red. They're not going to do a match program. So if you buy fruits or vegetables, they'll give you extra food. Or rather, they'll give you extra benefits to spend either on more fruits and vegetables or just whatever in general. I guess it would depend on the benefits program. They're only going to keep it the way it is, or they're going to put in more restrictions and give people less money. So since they're not reducing the amount of benefits, they're just saying no soda and no candy. I feel like that's the best we're going to get from them.
So not necessarily. I think this can be. I think you can sell this well in red states. If because the way a lot of these end up getting implemented is those incentives basically end up. So like you can essentially kind of make it to where those incentives are only available at kind of local producers. At farmers markets.
Okay, so if I buy vegetables and fruit and thus I get incentives, I have to go to like a local farmer's market to pick up the extra food.
Right, or not necessarily just a farmer's market, but even at grocery stores and things, but not at like corner stores, and things like that. And that can be directly kind of correlated as kind of keeping economic spending in-house, in state, and keeping it locally for primarily agricultural states that rely heavily on there is a strong. I think it can be framed and positioned well to kind of correlate highly with kind of the more traditional kind of conservative values, if you will, for kind of community and whatnot. If anybody actually cares about that anymore, which maybe they don't.
So this is great. I'm going to read the exact conclusion. It just restates what you've already said. It says, leveraging healthier eating through SNAP could generate substantial health benefits and be cost effective or cost saving, but a combined food incentive disincentive program appears most effective and maybe the most attractive to policymakers. So since that means we use both, I'm open to this because I'm open to giving people more benefits while also saying we don't trust you to just spend this on whatever you want. And I think the data backs that up, just Americans in general. And we can talk about the demographic of people who receive health benefit, or rather food benefits. So that being the case, would you agree that SNAP benefits, just if we're looking at food stamp benefits, should have some restrictions? Or would you say if you receive these food benefits, you should just spend them as you see fit?
So I think there is value in it, in having restrictions. I think how you implement those is matters, and I think the specifics matter, and the things like having a disincentive versus an outright ban. The outright ban actually makes that much more complicated, and that's what ends up kind of contributing to the overall social stigma and preventing people from using it at all, versus the kind of incentive disincentive where on these things you get basically like twice as much to spend on fruits and vegetables and half as much to spend on the things we don't like, but that kind of removes the social stigma and complexity of like can this
Well, I might be looking at this differently. It says a combined food incentive / disincentive program appears most effective and maybe the most attractive to policymakers. Doesn't that mean not buying hot food, not buying soda, plus we give incentives for fruits and vegetables. That's the way I read that, but I could be not looking
Well,
at this
so
correctly.
there's the disincentive can be implemented in different ways. That disincentive can be a complete restriction in which like this transaction is not approved versus like you there's you essentially get three buckets. Where kind of the one bucket has you get kind of a twice as much value
Yeah, so
in
you have
one
an
bucket is
allotment. So let's say you get $1,000 a month, just to make the math easy.
right.
$250 can be not cigarettes and booze, but anything else a grocery store sells, and then the rest of it is for this, and half of that is for
Well,
this. So you have different allotments of what you can buy.
right, essentially, like let's say it's your benefits are $1,000 a month, and but if we split that up into thirds, or let's say 900 because that'll be easier to deal with thirds, so from $900, that is the availability to spend on basically like any kind of valid food items, if you will, but
Yeah,
of
you
that
could buy
$900.
$900 worth of vegetables if you wanted to.
Well, no. So like $900 worth of like miscellaneous groceries, bread and cereal and stuff like that. But let's say a third of that $300, that would for fruits and vegetables, we're gonna double that value and say, or you got 600 for fruits and vegetables, or 150 for like the bad foods. So
Yeah, so
like
it can
a third
get
of it
ever
is
more
half as
complicated,
valuable.
just like tax law.
Like it,
You can
it,
do the
it, it,
doubles
it
and all these other things.
It does, but that's implemented on the back end and doesn't need to be implemented at the kind of storefront.
Yeah, because they'll track all the things that you purchase, at least according to how the
Right,
grocery store, convenience store labels them. And then all of that will just be formulas on the back end. So while you could
right.
really look at the allotments and try to get your max, you could also just see that at the end of the month, you were given an extra amount of money because of this reason that it tells you. So there'd be a simplified view plus the mathematical side that if you had the time, could really try to maximize for food for yourself and your family. But so to answer the question, it sounds like you're not against having some sort of rules for food stamps, whether or not you agree with
Yeah,
soda.
but I think how you do it matters, and I think just the a trying to boil it down to a binary black and white oversimplifies the situation, and isn't I don't think um, is really suitable. I think it makes it sound easier than it is. I think the implementation matters and the details matter. And just saying, do it or don't do it, doesn't doesn't work.
So, final question for you, then we'll jump over to Shannon. Once again, Bjorn, just because you can't raise your hand, you can just start talking. And then if anyone on Twitter Spaces wants to talk, just keep raising your hands. Makes it easier for me. Appreciate that. Um, if this is something that's backed up by some data, this is one, set of research from the National Institutes of Health, but it says a
And in
combined
fairness, it
food
was a
incentive.
simulation, so because
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just saying it's one. It's just one. I'm
yeah,
sure there's other data that has the same conclusion, but I just point out it's just one study.
yep.
A combined food incentive slash disincentive program appears most effective, so you get both ends of the coin, and also maybe the most attractive to policymakers. My question for you is why hasn't this been implemented more places? When we had a Democrat in the White House, and there were different power struggles through Biden's 4 years, but if you look at liberal states like Massachusetts or Washington State or Maine, or is Maine liberal? Some other places, California. Why isn't this more of a across the board thing if this is what the data is showing us? And if it's so much about dignity and not limiting people and putting them down, as Bjorn was making many points to as someone who received this growing up, and I appreciate you sharing your personal story as always, Bjorn. Why aren't we seeing more of this across the board from the liberal party of the United States when they have power in states and in the White House previously?
I think so. I think some of this comes down to the nature of division and polarization has made it such that nobody wants to there is no there is a disincentive to allow any aspect of anybody of any ideas that align with any opposition in any way to count a quote win. So the Democrats don't want to implement something like that because then they admit that there's that like something that Republicans want, like restrictions, have value, and the Republicans don't want to implement it because they would then have to admit that something like incentives that Democrats want have value.
I have the answer.
Yes, Bjorn has written something on Discord that I'll read here after we speak to Shannon. Otherwise, Bjorn, you also could just jump in and give us your 2 cents via your voice. I'm not sure if you're busy right now, and that's where you posted it, but I do see that on Discord, Bjorn. Thank you. So, Shannon, jumping over to you, why have we not seen this from more liberal states or when the White House is controlled by the Democrats?
I put the program down below. It's in 25 states. The reason other states haven't for the double up program. For the other reason most of the other states haven't gone in is because your state has to agree to pay part of that program and add it to your budget. So I put the 25 states down there.
So I'm looking at this on Twitter. I don't see it. I think it might be in the sometimes it doesn't show up if it's a it's not your fault, but sometimes it doesn't show up if you reply specifically to the Twitter space. It lists it as a reply there, but if you tweet me, it lists it as a notification. So sometimes I have to check.
There you go.
A couple places.
I know. I did that. I just sent it to your direct message as well. But
okay, thanks. Yeah, that just showed up. Thank you.
Is a great program, and I eat much better during the summertime than I do the wintertime because in Connecticut we don't grow anything, and the places we can use it for is only at farmers markets. So my farmers markets haven't even started yet. I think it's June 19th is the first one.
Wow, that's late for farmers markets. Connecticut.
No, not in Connecticut. Our growing period is because we start the growing period in May, but they don't produce until June because you can't grow in the middle of winter up here.
Late but feisty. Connecticut state motto.
Sorry.
So yeah, I'm sharing this over on the video stream. It says doubleupamerica.org. Get double the fruits and veggies. Double Up Food Bucks matches your SNAP EBT dollars. So you get twice the fruits and veggies, now available in more than 25 states. So I guess it is happening. I think I was thinking more of the restrictions plus the added benefits. And as I think MC Funk pointed out, you don't want to agree that the other side has a point, both for Republicans and Democrats. But I didn't know this, so thank you, Shannon. This is in more than 25 states. So more than half the states offer some sort of extra SNAP benefit if you buy certain items that are, once again, deemed healthy. Because we're making judgments. We're saying these are healthier options than other things you can get with your SNAP EBT dollars.
Right, but it doesn't work at grocery stores. Like I couldn't go into Big Y or Piggly Wiggly or we don't have those up here. But
that's a per state thing. So
yeah,
the University of Michigan thing that he was reading from earlier, they were specifically talking about the Double Up Food Bucks program in Michigan, and they do work at, it's basically an opt-in for the kind of farmers markets and grocery stores, and so there are the grocery stores that participate in it. It works there. So, but
I did.
That's entirely down to implementation. So sometimes.
Time out. So that means if you go to a grocery store and they participate in it, you get the double up credits, or you mean you only get the double up credits to redeem at certain places like a market or a grocery store?
I don't know what the specific implementation is, but it is. But from what I understand, it is like it's not like a separate thing. It's kind of tied to your effectively your SNAP account, and that the places that participate, when you use your SNAP benefits there, it applies on the back end.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the frequently asked questions on doubleupamerica.org, and it looks like everyone's included, but you can only get the double at certain locations, which I think makes the most sense. So anyone
Correct.
receiving SNAP benefits is automatically eligible for the program. And Double Up was piloted in Detroit in 2009. Hey, that's a good place to start it. I'm down with that. Before expanding across the country, today Double Up is offered in dozens of states. The top of the page says more than 25, at more than 900 locations, from farmers markets to grocery stores. And that would be the places where you can get your Double Up bonus delivered to you. So you can spend it anywhere and you're eligible to receive the Double Up bonus, but you have to go to more than 900 locations, from farmers markets to grocery stores, in order to receive that benefit.
Correct. Like in Connecticut, not all farmers markets take those.
Yeah, so and
My town one does, but
It-
not all of them do.
it looks like in Michigan, the way they've implemented it. So I'm looking through the how it works section on the website for Michigan's Double Up Food Bucks program, and at at grocery stores, a lot of them tie it to their grocery store loyalty card. That usually gives you those in-store discounts, and so if you they essentially they tie it to your loyalty card and implement it on the back end. So when they scan your card, then it basically does half off on anything that's applicable to.
The way it works for me,
That's
like when I go to my
interesting.
farmer's market, is I have to go to the customer service desk or whatever booth, customer service booth, I guess. And they give me like ticket stubs for how much I can spend at the food market, and the
Oh, okay.
booths
So
that
they kind of
accept
go
it.
back to like food stamps in that food market, because they see how much you're eligible for, and they give you like a paper stub,
Right,
and then you can go
absolutely.
use that to pick up your
And
vegetables.
they'll give me which booths I can use it at, and because at farmers market it could be crafts or other things or
Someone's
made
probably
stuff.
selling booze at that farmer's market. Yeah, I ain't buying that.
No, I was thinking like they have like I can't get honey. I couldn't get honey from the farmer's
Oh
market.
yeah, the natural,
You
like
know
I
what I
have my
mean?
own
Like the
bees honey thing you
right,
couldn't
yeah.
get.
Yeah. Right, but I could get fruits and vegetables I can get, or like sometimes they'll have a butcher there selling meat, so I couldn't get that either. But I could get the fruits and veggies.
You can't get meat?
No, it's not included in that
Oh, because
program.
it's the Double Up is, yeah, it's not just food
It's
stamps. It's
specific,
the
right? It's
double part is only for.
right.
Okay,
It's
that makes sense.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I can't use the EBT card at each booth, or probably that would be acceptable because each person at the farmer's market that's selling doesn't have an EBT machine.
Don't they just work on credit card machines? But you mean they don't have a credit card machine? They're just taking cash?
It doesn't work that way. No. It's not like a credit card machine. Like each store has to program for EBT.
But I
It's
mean,
not
like I've
like
seen people use EBT cards because, as MC Funk correctly pointed out earlier, it does resemble a credit card. But if you
it
know what to
absolutely
look
does.
for when you see someone holding it, you know that it's an EBT card. It looks a little bit different. And I've seen them just use the normal credit card machine, but you mean that it has to be programmed into the credit card
Correct, but you
machine.
have to be
You just can't go
right.
to
Yeah,
any credit card machine and use it.
right. You have to be programmed with the with the SNAP software as well. That's another problem with implementing the tap cards or
Okay.
the card
So
with
if
a
you
chip.
have
It
someone
does miss the
who's
whole.
at a farmer's market and has an actual credit card machine, unless it's programmed to take SNAP, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'd be able to use it, as opposed to
Right.
if you use a tap but it doesn't tap, then you swipe it or you stick it in. It's a credit card. It works. EBT is an extra step. Okay.
Correct. The store has to be programmed with SNAP to use it, because you can't just go into any store, any grocery store, and use it if they're not programmed. Like maybe there's a backcountry store or something, and they're not with SNAP. Not everyone takes EBT.
Yeah, if you walk in
So
and they say you got a purr to mouth, then they're probably not going to
yeah.
accept your EBT card. We lost Bjorn over on stereo, but I'm calling him now, and I have the volume turned down so that we won't hear that horrible call sound. But this is what Bjorn said over on Discord. He wrote, "The number is actually closer to $200 to $300 for a single person a month. I don't know about you, but I spend that over that for every week easily. So again, the focus is on people taking advantage of the system. This is when we're talking about some of the detractions, like okay, some people do take advantage of the system, but the vast
Yeah,
majority of
max
people
depends.
are using this money to make wise choices for their family. I think that is the norm, not the scammers. I would say the scammers are certainly not the norm, just like so many other people who rip off state and federal benefit programs. I completely agree with you. Um,
Right, and the
the
max depends
choice
on your
about
state.
making good decisions for their family, I would be a little bit more nuanced for that, calling that a norm, but generally I agree with what you're saying. Sorry, Shana, what were you saying?
Yes, the max depends one on your state because depending on your cost of living, you could get more or less. So, like in Connecticut, our max is for one person is $292 a month. That's the max you can get, regardless of how poor you are.
So
292 is
around
the
what Bjorn was saying previously, yeah, $200 to $300, yeah.
right. And Florida, what's a cheap state like Florida? Let's see, Florida Snap Max is
I bet it's lower
252.
than Connecticut. Oh, really? It's
It's
not too much.
252.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
So this is also
but it also
something.
goes down. Like if you have more than one person, like you don't get another 292 for that second person.
Yes. So
You get
combined
less.
benefits, oftentimes with state and the federal government, are not the same thing as two separate benefits, and you just add them together. I agree with that. That's often the case. I saw some two disabled people who were like in wheelchairs, but mentally were just like you or I, but they had severe physical disabilities. They found love and they were married. And I read this article some years ago, and they were talking about how it was a really hard decision to get married because when they got married, they lost a substantial amount of benefits because combined, their benefits were not worth as much as they were separately. Um, and I can understand why. I think there are some cost savings that you experience when you're together in many different instances where you would be receiving federal benefits. But for them, it sounded like a really bad deal. So, yeah, that is a real thing. Bjorn has
Yeah,
joined us
there's
again over on Stereo. But really quickly, let me jump to this, Shannon. This is something Bjorn put on my Discord server. Once again, go to bit.ly/NEWZ debate to join us for free over on Discord. SNAP is and remains our most effective tool to combat hunger. This is from cbpp.org, which is the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. This is from February of 2023. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, is our nation's most effective tool for combating hunger. It plays a critical role in reducing poverty, improving health and economic outcomes, supporting people who are paid low wages, once again, like Walmart, and serving as the first line of defense against hunger during economic downturns. Access to SNAP provides families with the money they need to purchase groceries, freeing up their limited resources to spend more on other basic needs such as housing, utilities, and medical and child care. SNAP is highly effective at reducing hunger and is a powerful anti-poverty tool, especially during times of economic downturn. It reduces hunger by as much as 30%, is even more effective among children. I assume that's all true. Studies have shown that hunger among children fell by roughly 1/3 after their families received SNAP benefits for 6 months. Hunger was poised to soar early in the COVID-19 pandemic, but SNAP's structure and policy changes made it easier for families to access SNAP during this period. SNAP helps a broad range of people with low incomes, including children, older adults, people with disabilities, and veterans. SNAP helps nearly 1 in 4 children in the United States. Once again, living in the US sucks. We're a developing country. Afford an adequate diet. Nearly 2/3 of SNAP benefits go to families with children. SNAP helps nearly 6 million low income older adults. People with disabilities, nearly 4 million non elderly adults who either receive disability benefits or have work limiting health conditions. SNAP helps more than 1 million low income veterans who may struggle to find work, may be employed in low paid jobs, or may have disabilities or chronic health conditions. SNAP is linked to improved outcomes for education, economic security, and self-sufficiency, is associated with improved health outcomes and lower medical costs, and is an important support for workers. There's a lot more here, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you for that link, Bjorn. I appreciate that. We also have another link up here from MC Funk. Right now, does anyone have anything to comment on what we've covered thus far before I go to the link from MC Funk?
The only other thing the other one it's going to affect is children's free lunches at their school, because that falls under SNAP too. If you're on SNAP, your child automatically gets free lunches.
Okay, so that's a question. So if you're on SNAP, your kid gets free lunch, but you also could probably apply for free lunch based on your whatever they would require from the school district without being on SNAP, right? So they're not totally the same thing, but they're very closely related.
Well, they're under the same budget for SNAP. So
but I mean, like, I bet it would be possible for someone to apply for reduced or free lunch for their kids at school without also being on SNAP. Like, does that seem logical?
Oh, I would assume so, but let's say your parent doesn't get a job within the 2 months because they're an able-bodied work adult. So now all the children get cut off too.
Well, I think that's possible, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because I don't think that free lunches are paid for or informed necessarily by SNAP. I think that's more of a district to district thing. Like, you have to do something with the district. I don't know, but my guess is that the federal government, through their legislation to rein in food stamps, is not going to also spend a bunch of time alerting school districts, because it goes into that bureaucracy. Like, that's a lot of work.
I don't know. That was also from the Center of Budget that I'm reading from, the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities.
Could be wrong. That's just my guess, but yeah, I could be wrong. Whatever the case is, SNAP is probably very much related to food at school.
There are some really weird laws about SNAP in school. Like, if you're between 18 and 22, you're still on your parents' account. They'd still take your parents' income into consideration. Like, if you're away at school.
Yeah, just like college. That's FAFSA. It's all based, unless you divorce your parents financially, it's all based on your parents.
Right. But if you're staying at school and you're paying for your own, but you go home and that's your residence, like but you're working and you have to do like 40 hours.
If you don't live with your parents and you are in college or even not in college, I think until you're out of college age, so probably around 22, you're still financially connected to your parents. That's normal.
Right. No. What I'm saying is that even if they are paying for the school themselves, but they go home on break and their parents don't pay the food, they're paying for everything for their school, they still can't get their own food stamps, even though they qualify.
It's the same thing with college. If you go to college and you pay for it 100% and are not living with your parents, when you fill out the FAFSA, you are still connected to your parents and you still need to include their income information.
But you think that's okay?
That's the system. I'm just saying that's the system. That's why if your parents won't give you money, but their income is preventing you from getting financial aid in college, you can, I don't know if the term is divorce, but you can literally declare yourself independent from your parents, and then you don't have to use their income for FAFSA. So all I'm saying is this is par for the course. This is what it's like to be a young adult.
Yeah, no, I remember my parents paid too much money for me to qualify for some college stuff. So, yeah, I understand. But yeah, I just always found it weird, or like there are shitty parents out there that just stop feeding their kids when they turn 18. And there's nothing that really law enforcement can do because the child's an adult. It's just kind of crappy.
Yeah, it's a bad system. I've read about people who would like sue their parents because they wouldn't pay for their college. But the fact that their parents made a certain amount of money prevented them from getting enough financial aid to go to college by themselves. And then once again, like divorcing your parents. This is from ChatGPT. Yes. One second here. Let me share this on my video stream. Receiving Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program SNAP benefits is directly tied to eligibility for free school meals. Children in households participating in SNAP are categorically eligible for free school meals under the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. This means they automatically qualify without needing to submit a separate application. Yes. So, once again, you can apply to do this on your own, but if you're receiving SNAP, you're automatically enrolled.
Yeah, and I know they get an additional card in the summertime to feed their kids as well, because they don't get the free lunches and free breakfasts at school. So they send them an extra card for families that have school-age children to cover the free breakfast and free lunches during the summertime when they're off.
Yeah, and that was a thing with COVID, right? Was that all these kids were staying home, so that some districts were trying to send food home, because it wasn't like just because they were home, they all of a sudden had more food. I could see how a district would say that's not our responsibility, because that's an added expense and added complexity during COVID. But I did see some districts did that, and of course, I'm sure that helped a lot of people. We're going to get to this article thing from MC Funk, but also Bjorn has messaged on Discord from ChatGPT. If your family receives SNAP benefits, yes. Okay, sorry. You did the same thing I did. Look at this. 2 minutes before I did. Thank you, Bjorn. Look at that. Already on top of things. All right, MC Funk, let me go to this. This is more about Double Up, the thing that Shannon introduced, and you have tweeted a link to that. Let me pull that up here.
No, MC Funk introduced it. I just added.
Oh, damn it. Look at me. I'm behind on everything. So MC Funk first introduced this, and then I gave credit to Shannon. But okay, this is doubleupforbucks.org. Says 2 ways to shop. 1 second here. It says at the grocery store. Oh, it's asking for my email. At the grocery store and at the farmer's market. So let's see how it works at the grocery store. You find a participating store near you. You ask how it works at their store. They may use coupons, they may use a loyalty card or a Double Up Food Bucks card. And this is if they do it. You shop for fruits and veggies, and then you pay with whatever they give you, either coupons or your bridge card or whatever, blah, 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 blah. The store will match it up to $20 a day. Okay, so that's at the grocery store. Let's look at the farmer's market. You find a participating farmer's market near you. You talk to somebody like at an information booth. You get your tokens. They may give you tokens. They may give you paper. And for every $2 you spend, you'll get $2 in Double Up Food Bucks. So yeah, it's the matching, and they either match it at the grocery store or they match it at the farmer's market. I'm a little confused by this, MC Funk. So is this still anywhere they will match it, or do you have to shop at a store that says they will match it and then also get your matched goods from that store or farmer's market? It looks like you only get matching if you shop at a farmer's market or store that matches.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's the matching, like the program is implemented through the it's implemented at the retail location. So you basically only get it if you shop at the places that participate, and those are the different ways that ends up looking from the retail you know, at the checkout. But it's like the state implements it on the back end with the store. But from the consumer perspective, those are like the various different ways that you may end up using it. It just depends on how the particular retail location that has chosen to opt in or participate chooses to implement that.
Yeah, so it's slightly different than what I thought it was earlier. It's a little bit more restrictive, which is not a huge deal because this is a really good program. I would have been surprised if it was actually what I originally thought it was. Originally, I thought you just spend money with your foods benefits EBT card, your SNAP thing, and it calculates how much you buy in fruits and vegetables, and then it gives you a benefit, but you have to go to a certain place to pick up the benefit. That would be a really big, expansive program. Clearly they don't have that infrastructure, so you have to go to a store. So let's say you go to a local grocery store and you ask, and they say, yes, we do the double up program. You buy fruits and vegetables with your EBT card, and you are registered for the double that you get because you're automatically part of the system as someone who receives food benefits, but it's only registered in a participating location, and you can also get your double up at that same participating location, whether or not it's a grocery store or whether or not it's a farmer's market. But once all that's been done, all the numbers calculated and stuff that is used with the overall food stamp system that you're a part of in order to account for all of this doubling up that's going on. I think that seems to be the final case there. So not quite as expansive as I originally thought, but the fact that they just have this program in 25 or more states is pretty amazing nonetheless. So okay, so we've arrived at that. So I think if I've calculated the tally right now, as Bjorn and Shannon and MC Funk are joining us, I'm the only person who not only has no problem with restricting the soda, the energy drinks, and the candy. I'm for it. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Everyone else is against that. But I think I may have forgotten. I think everybody was okay with the idea that you could
No, I'm
have
like I.
some restrictions.
Lee, we can't hear you again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought MC Funk was talking. Were you going to throw an MC?
He's disconnected. He got kicked out, I
Oh,
think.
he just dropped.
But
Yeah.
I saw him. I saw him unmute, and then it disconnected him. So I think he was trying. No, I'm against.
This is
Yes,
where
I'm
Elon
against.
Musk comes in. So yeah, let's just do. Maybe we'll end the show and we'll do a final round. So Shannon, tell me what you think about what Nebraska is doing, and tell me what you think about just having any restrictions on food stamps at all. So two-parter.
No, there should be restrictions on things like alcohol and cigarettes. As I said, that doesn't cover your children. That's like a vice. Um, and as for other restrictions or changing stuff like picking up at locations, because we have food banks, you could go to the food banks and pick up if you have the means. But a lot of people don't, especially with strained food banks, because you don't need to be on SNAP or anything to get food stamp or to get food pantries. You do have to be under an income level for your town, but
But yeah, I mean,
don't
different
necessarily have to be on
cities,
SNAP or
areas
WIC.
will
Right.
have their own churches, food pantries that are not tied into a SNAP benefits program. So you just go there and you do whatever process they have, which may be you show up and we just give you food, or you show up and we ask you some questions and then we give you food.
Right. Like in my town, we do have a good mobile food bank that changes locations every week. And it has stuff like fruits and veggies, meat, stuff that and you actually get to choose what to take out of the mobile food bank. You show up. It's basically in a parking lot. It's like a big bus, and you get to choose what you take. Like, but my town food bank, you don't get to choose. They just have bags ready for you.
So you might get some beans at that town food bank, is what you're telling me?
Uh-huh. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. And you can't like exchange them. It's not like it's they just give you the bag and you pull up, they give you the bag and that's it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay,
you don't get
so
to choose.
once again, if you need food assistance, of course, there's the food stamps, EBT thing, SNAP benefits, but also look around locally, just like anything in the United States. Look around locally. There may be a lot of organizations, and as an atheist who doesn't like organized religion, I will admit there's a lot of churches out there that do a lot of good work in this area. So good for them. But going back to the question at hand, your four
Yep.
limitations on food assistance programs from the government. You noted cigarettes and alcohol, but you're against candy, soda, and energy drink restrictions, correct?
Yeah, yeah, any of those that are already included in the SNAP now, I don't think should be restricted.
Okay. And MC Funk, you're joining us again over on Twitter Spaces. Are you a speaker? Oh, you're just a listener. Well, if you want to jump in and throw it, I'm not sure what's going on with you. He always, every once in a while, is like, "Oh, I got to jump over to my computer because my Android phone's killing me," or something like that. Maybe we'll hear from
Oh no,
him. But
they had a
Bjorn,
big
you're still with us. Yeah, he just left. Maybe he'll come back in. Bjorn, you're still with us. Give us any final thoughts and reiterate your stance on restrictions in general on food stamp benefits and what you think about what Nebraska's trying to do.
I think you just called me, but yeah, I think in general, my if you ask my like idealistic principle on this, I think we should be um, doing like programs that provide dignity and autonomy to folks and not like hyper restrictions. Because the hyper restrictions create like terrible barriers and indignities, etc., and stigma, like has been previously spoken about. So, and this might be more of a, I guess, libertarian sort of stance. But like, if you were doing something more like instead of spending money on, all these, regulatory things to make sure that someone's working and say someone's that they're, not buying too many like, you know, sodas or whatever, then you could be giving them potentially more money by not giving them like to people who are sitting in offices, checking the box, make sure that they're not buying enough sodas or paying this back end sort of thing. Like think of all the money that's wasted, basically like adding all these regulations. So like more of like a universal basic income to me is a more appealing. It gives people more autonomy. And the other side of that is it also opens the door for more poor usage of the funds, more purchases of vices, etc. But as it sits, if you to ask me about this specific program, I think it's okay to do restrictions. Um, you know, the thing is like, what is next? Is bacon next? I mean, bacon is super related to like your heart disease, and so is that the next thing on the chopping block
They
once you go
say you
soda?
can't buy
That's a
red meat.
reasonable argument. Right. I mean, so yeah, so like before long, like Snap is going to be like vegan only, because if you want to go like the most healthiest diet, it's
Wouldn't it be great
obviously
to see
like
the
a vegan
conservative
diet.
Republicans in Nebraska or just federally to make it so that if you're on SNAP benefits, you can only be a vegan? Because that's a diet they totally don't endorse. But they're like, well, it's the only healthy food you can eat. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, we're Republicans. We can't support that.
Right. And exactly. And it's also funny because the same folks were raging against Michelle Obama's efforts to make foods in schools healthier. And
She
here
just
they
wanted to
are on
make
that same
kids
side
less
now.
fat.
So politics are funny.
Yeah, I remember Tan Suit Gate
So
with
anyway,
Barack Obama. He's not my favorite president, but like that was literally all they had on him was like, well, he wasn't born in the U.S. and he wore a tan suit. Oh, and I think he bowed to the president or emperor of Japan or something like that. And that's all they had. And then Michelle Obama, this lady who's very physically fit. Whatever you want to say about Michelle Obama, like you can tell she's a healthy, fit individual. She's just like, hey, let's move. Jon Stewart had a great report on this in the last couple of days. He was like, that one day when Republicans resoundingly across the United States said, we're against movement. I mean, she literally just wanted kids to move and not eat crap all the time. And Republicans just tore her a new one. So it is funny because I don't pretend for a moment that Republicans, have a leg to stand on, but they'll always do one thing and then do the exact opposite. So when it comes to food stamps, you got to get rid of the sugar and you got rid of this other stuff. But if we ever tried to have California say you can't sell sodas in certain areas, they may have tried to do this, or they've already. I know we got rid of trans fats in New York or something like that. But if they tried to say, oh, you can't sell sodas or energy drinks or candy in areas where children are 50% or more of the street traffic or something, Republicans would be all over that because it's against the free market and stuff. But they're trying to basically do that in Nebraska.
Exactly.
So you're not wrong, Bjorn.
And the last thing I'll say is thanks for being back, Lee. We missed you. Keep doing more shows. I'm being called away from my children to go and inspect our tomato, which is apparently grown a first tomato. So I'm going to go check that out. Speaking of growing healthy things, it's free to do. Grow tomatoes.
Yeah, there it is. I can buy that tomato with my SNAP benefits and get double bucks. Thank you, Bjorn. Always great to have you.
Sorry, Lee. Actually, you can buy seeds on food stamps to grow your own food.
Oh, when you said seeds, it made me think of something else, and I was like, "Yeah,
well, yeah, of course it did."
Yeah,
but...
that is a vegetable. That's a plant, right?
Yep, anything you can buy gardening supply, like seeds and stuff to grow.
No, but I mean, like if you were caught with marijuana, they would say his house was raided yesterday, and he was caught with 20 marijuana plants, which would be a synonym for like 20 marijuana vegetables. So I mean, like, I feel like you could not only buy that with EBT, but you could get double bucks.
Would that be? Well, it would be considered a flower, right? Not a fruit or a vegetable.
Oh, I guess a flower is not a vegetable. Yeah, so it would be a flower. Oh, can you buy flowers with EBT? I bet you could.
You know what? I probably bet you could get away with it because I don't know if they like.
It'd probably be labeled as produce in a lot of stores, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Do you have to buy everything with EBT be edible or drinkable? Like, you can't buy toilet paper, right? We established that. So everything has to be you can't buy pencils. So I guess in that way, you shouldn't be able to buy flowers. But yeah, I think if you go to a lot of stores, they probably wouldn't have enough labeling that if they, well, that's a good point. Well, whatever the case, I just want to buy marijuana with EBT. That was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no,
MC Funk has been jumping in and out over on Twitter Spaces.
No, it's not him. You weren't on last night. There was in Portland, an X data center was set on fire, and everyone was having issues with getting direct messages. I was in a space last night. My screen split in two. I couldn't get back in the room. And then it happened again this morning. They're not saying
okay,
what
so
happened,
maybe MC Funk is experiencing that and not just the normal problems with Twitter Spaces. But I was looking at my messages yesterday on Twitter and they wouldn't pop up. And I couldn't understand why. And so I guess if there was a data center that was set on fire. Okay, I guess that was it.
About 8 o'clock.
Well, whatever the case, I got to run, so I apologize. I got to cut it short. But MC Funk, I appreciate you trying to come back into Twitter Spaces like 7 or 8 times at the end of the show, and unfortunately, it's just not working. But to reiterate, I think MC Funk was for the idea of restrictions. He was open to having the possibility of restrictions, but if I remember correctly, was against what they're trying to do in Nebraska. So I really appreciate the conversation. I'm for everything they're trying to do in Nebraska, but at the same time, I learned a lot by hearing everyone's perspectives. I learned a lot more about food stamps than I ever knew previously, and I found a lot of value in the conversation. So I appreciate everybody joining. I hope to do more shows. It's not my exact setup, but I have enough new equipment that I'm making it work, and I think I can continue to make it work until I'm back at the house. So appreciate you guys. I think I'll do a show maybe again on Tuesday or later in the next week. I think the rest of the weekend I'm booked. So look for that. I'll post that on Discord. I'll post that on Twitter. So twitter.com/NEWZ debate, and join my Discord by going to bit.ly/NEWZ debate. You can also go to patreon.com/NEWZ debate and support the show like all these great people like MC Funk and Bjorn and Shannon, and also Ron, another Patreon supporter who joined us earlier in the show and said hello. So that's going to do it, everybody. Hope to have you join me again, probably later this next upcoming week. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend, holiday weekend, right? And take care. Bye-bye.